Okay guys, we just got Mopar cold air intake kit delivered. Amazon had a really good price on these. It was about $320. And this is gonna go in my Challenger Scat pack. So this kit will work for, I believe, the 300C, the Charger, and then the Challenger. But because the Challenger has the headlights set up, I think on 2015 plus, to do the Hellcat air intake, I also ordered this snorkel that goes into the cutout here in the airbox. So you line it up, you drill out the 4 holes, and then you use little pop rivets to hold it in. So if you have a Challenger, you can take advantage of that fake headlight pop out, put the snorkel in. I actually have the Hellcat Airbox lower in the car right now, and the factory snorkel is made out of some kind of pressed felt. So this Mopar rubber one, which it's still branded, should be good with a warranty. Much nicer. And I figured I would go with a cold air box. And then there's a pretty large cone type filter that's washable. It's a dry filter as well. It's not oiled filter. Once we get to the engine bay, I'll show you. With the Hellcat Airbox, there's some interference concerns with the overflow, the expansion tank for the coolant. And even when you move it, it still contacts. So I've actually had one of these in the car before, and these fit a lot better, so I went and bought another one. So we'll go ahead and get to the installation. Okay, so to get the stock airbox out, you've got to wiggle off this PVC breather line. They're usually all the way back here. It takes a little bit of force and wiggle it back and forth. I've already gotten it pretty freed up. One thing I'd like to note is if you do have the factory intake, or maybe even one of these aftermarket ones, and you take it to the dealer to get an oil change, I found that they actually sometimes don't tighten this all the way or put this all the way on, or sometimes they don't put it back on at all, because I believe they remove this breather line because it connects to the fill neck, and sometimes oil can come out of this when they're filling the engine back up with oil and getting in the airbox. So I believe they disconnect this as a precaution, but what happens is they may not hook it back up, and I noticed one time that mine was not fully connected. So I would just pop your hood after you get an oil change. It's a good idea anyway to make sure everything's right and make sure they get this line back on. So we're gonna go ahead, release the clamp on the intake pipe, and then actually I found it easier if you take the 3 air lid bolts out, and then you can pop this bolt off and take the lower half out. Just for reference, all the lid bolts, the mount bolt for the lower box, and the clamp, they're all 8mm. So just need 8mm driver. Loosen all these guys up. I'm going to do the box lower bolt, like the mounting bolt, last, so I can get the lid off and give myself some more room to work. Before I get all the airbox lid bolts out and get the airbox lid off, I just want to point out, so here's the interference I was talking about. If you have a Hellcat lower box, you can see, just barely see that I have the snorkel down there for the Hellcat lower. What I believe happens is, and I put the Hellcat box up against the stock one, the position of this mount's slightly different. And I think that combined with the position, it basically positions the lid in a little different location, which causes the stock hose to drive it towards this expansion tank. So, and if you don't loosen the bolts in the expansion tank and move it all the way back, and even sometimes you even have to take a file and take some material and ovalize these holes to get it as far back as possible, it really rubs up against the expansion tank here, and some people have actually complained about a little bit of wear. So if you're going to do the Hellcat lower, make sure you pay attention to that, and you're going to want to move your tank back or put some kind of insulator in there between the two. That's why, one of the reasons why I'm opting to do the Mopar cold air is because I've actually installed it once before, and that lower box fits perfectly in here. Okay, you can see we have the airbox top off, and here's our stock. Well, this actually isn't a stock air filter for this car. This is a stock, let's see if I can figure out where it's written on here. There it is. This is the, so we get the part number there. There's the part number. This is the Hellcat air filter, which actually there's some people that have looked into these. they flow. These flow about as much dirty as the stock Challenger air filter, because it's pretty much common across all the different engines other than the Hellcat flows. So yeah, those are $20-$30 on Amazon. So honestly, if you're going to do anything to modify your intake, you may just want to try one of those air filters, because it's probably going to give you the greatest bang for the buck. It gives you probably nearly as much flow as a K&N or an AEM dry, and it's still paper, and it's even tagged Chrysler, so or Mopar, so it's not going to be a warranty issue. So now we have this mounting bolt out, and we should just be able to lift this airbox out. Figure out, oh, there's a little peg in the back we have to clear it. There we go. And because I have that little snorkel on here, it's a little bit of a shimmy to get this out, but it's not bad. There we go. There's your airbox. So if you're taking the stock one out, you won't have that Hellcat snorkel on there. So we're going to go ahead and prep the cold air intake for installation. So the first thing we're going to do to get the Mopar cold air ready is, since I have the Challenger, I want to use the headlight, so the Hellcat headlight option. We're going to put the snorkel on and use whatever marking utensil you want to use. Mark the 4 holes, and then take, I believe it's a 1/4 inch. Let's see. Yeah, 1/4 inch drill bit. And you're gonna drill out these holes so you can put the pop rivets in. So now that you have your holes marked, barely see it, it's really faint. That one you can barely see. I'm gonna go ahead, got our 1/4 inch drill bit. You may want to use a squirrel or something to do some sort of pilot dent. I'm gonna go for broke because I don't feel like digging a punch out right now, but go ahead and carefully drill these out. So now that you have your holes drilled, you can go ahead and fit the headlight snorkel onto the box. Grab your little plastic pop rivets and start fitting those all the way around. And I'm going to go put them all in with 2 hands so I can get everything nice and flush. So there we have it, the snorkel's installed, everything lined up nice. Now we're going to go ahead and get the filter adapter and the hardware and mount that in there, and the peg that goes here on the back to mount it into the fender well. So you need to transfer 2 items from the stock airbox. This rubber kind of boot for the peg that goes into the fender well. You may need 2 hands to get that bad well. And you also need to transfer this grommet with the metal insert. That's what you tie it all down with. It helps to run a screwdriver right through here and then pop it off. So we got our screwdriver. You work this guy off. If it's brand new, it may take a little more effort to get it off. And we'll pull this plug and then, or this little boot plug, whatever you want to call it, and then we'll put all these pieces onto the new air. So to install this rubber peg on the new cold air box, they provide this aluminum stud, or what do they actually call it, aluminum boss, and these 10mm hex bolts. So you're essentially going to run the bolt through here, thread the stud in, so thread your stud in, and then take rubber boot and slide it in there. So yeah, that bolt head's 10mm, and I think I'm going to throw a tiny bit of Loctite on the tip of the threads after I get it in here. One thing about Loctite is with plastics, you want to be careful and not get a lot of it on the plastic because it can degrade the plastic. And the instructions do call out for red thread locker on these inserts for the adapter. I'd recommend using blue. I think red's a bit excessive if you ever want to take this apart. Blue should be fine. They give you torque specs for all this, 4 Newton meters and 3.5 Newton meters. But unfortunately, my inch-pound wrench doesn't go any lower than 40, so I'm just going to hand tighten them. So to avoid having the thread locker butt up against the plastic, I'm dropping it in from the opposite side of where the threads will go in. Here's where I'm going to do the thread engagement. Put a little bit in so it'll drip down, and it won't come in contact with the plastic. Okay, if you do use any thread locker, make sure you wipe the excess off the outside. Let's see, we've got this guy run in. Put your rubber boot on there, and I'll push it on once I get two hands, and then we're going to install the air filter adapter. So I applied the Loctite, and you probably won't be able to see it the same way on these inserts as I did on that little aluminum standoff. I dropped it in to the threads, and then I wiped off the outside to clean the plastic so there wasn't any remaining that could potentially cause damage. So once you have that thread locker prepped, you're going to go ahead and put your filter adapter in. See, it fits a certain way. There's a little bevel here that goes to this outer edge. Hand tighten your bolts, and we're going to go ahead and then tighten them up with our 10mm socket. Make sure you tighten your bolts in a cross pattern just to make sure everything's even. So this end, and you always end up getting one next to each other, this end and then that end. Or just make sure you cross them up as you go through. Just helps to keep it nice and level and evenly seated. The air filter adapter on. I'm going to go ahead and take this plug that's provided, pop it in the side hole. This is for the breather line. If you're putting on like a 5.7 liter, or maybe even the V6, that's for the breather. Our breather, or my breather on the 6.2 liter comes in parallel with the air intake. So pop that cover on, and we're going to go ahead and reinstall this grommet. The flat portion of it faces up. We're going to have to do this off camera because it's going to take a little bit of force to get it in here. There we go. We have it all nice and snugged up in there. You can even work it in without the screwdriver if you're patient. So we're going to pop the air filter in and then go ahead and install this in the car. One thing, don't forget, before we put the air filter in, we're going to run the little sealing clip grommet gasket around the edges. So make sure you put that on. You can do it after the filter, but I don't want to mess up and jam the filter when I'm putting this on. Okay, once you have your little weather seal installed, this is probably one of the more pain in the butt parts, just bending around the corners, but get it nice and flush in there. Put your air filter in. I'd recommend taking the air filter on and off a couple times because there's some flashing inside of it, and make sure you give it a good whack on the end of it to get whatever could be on the inside of it out. Put it on and off a couple times, see whatever loose stuff comes off, and then wipe out the inside of this tube before you put everything in there because you want to avoid sucking anything into the intake of the car. You can see there's a bunch of flashing. See all this in here around these edges. I'm going to go ahead and, so we get better light, take an X-Acto knife and cut that stuff out because I don't want it getting loose and getting sucked in the engine. So just for reference, here's some of the chunks of flashing that the bigger ones that I cut out, cleaning this thing up. It's not horrible, but I found that almost all of these types of intakes, they have a certain amount of flashing from when they're manufactured. Now you can see, I just took the X-Acto knife, and there's two rings. There's an edge around here that I need to clean up. There's an edge right here. And just with a little bit of X-Acto knife, could probably even take a sharp non-serrated kitchen knife and clean it up, but makes me feel a lot better before I put this thing in about not having any potential debris. And once you get it cleaned out, flip it upside down, give it a good tap, and while it was upside down, I took my rag and wiped the inside, and I'll probably give it a couple more rounds of cleaning just to make sure I get it all out. To help guide that snorkel in, you're going to want to remove this panel here, and it just kind of pops up. There's two tabs kind of tabbed in on the side, and there's a little lip that grabs it right where the release is, so you gotta kind of pop it free and then slide it out from the side, and it's out nice and easy. So to get this guy in, you're just going to tilt it in, guide the snorkel over the headlight hole, push back the intake coupler a little bit just so it starts getting seated or angled the seat in to the filter adapter, and just make sure this PCV line isn't getting stuck under it. So kind of lower it in, slip this guy over, and then you've got to find the hole that this stud or standoff, rubber boot, whatever you want to call it, sits in, and kind of wiggle it around till it gets in there. And yeah, now we just have to run the bolt. And you can see that there actually is more clearance in here. And once I get it tightened down, I'm going to readjust this guy back to how it originally was, because I believe, I want to say it was back more this way. That'll give me a little more clearance where it was originally. So I took the filter off just because it's easier to maneuver this thing around. We'll put it in when we button it up. Also, I vacuumed the inside of the filter out very carefully just to make sure that all of the debris was out of it. So if you're going to go ahead, and I recommend you clean it up, then vacuum it out just to make sure, because you don't want to suck anything into your intake. Okay, so we have everything wrapped up. Got the panel back in. When you put this guy back in, just align the center tab, put a little bend in it, get slotted, the peg slotted in these holes, and pop it down. We have our little PCV adapter, little coupling put in, and I found it easier to, because this hose is much more rigid, to pop it into this hose first, back it up as far as it'll go, and then slide the filter. And that's probably how you're gonna have to take it out to change it, is pop it out of the filter, because this little line on that adapter is really rigid. So so we got the whole thing buttoned up, and sorry about the sniffling in this video. Allergies are kicking my butt today. And we'll see how it goes. I had one of these, like I said, I had one of these in before, and there's really no significant performance increase. I think I felt a little better throttle response, but honestly, I wanted to use the headlight opening. It's kind of hard to see, you can see in there. And the Hellcat Airbox, I just didn't like the way it fit. I really like the way this one fits, nice and smooth in here, and it's still an OEM part, so we're good to go. Thanks for watching.